and I'm gonna start recording now.
Just make sure you go on mute when we start streaming so our voices aren't overheard in the background.
Warning. Incoming game over. Warning. Incoming.
Alright, Flames fans, welcome, good evening. Not the best of the games that we are here to talk about. Welcome, good evening. Hope you are having a great evening and not the best night for the Flames. We'll talk about that. We'll cover everything you have to know on the Calgary Flames this evening. My name is Anand Unnithan, one of your newer hosts, hosting my first time. So apologies if anything goes wrong. We'll handle it to the best of our ability. And joining me this evening is Matt DeMille. Matt, good evening. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Anand. Thank you for having me. Of course, I'm stoked to be back on Game Over Calgary. How am I doing today? I can't say I'm doing great after having to suffer through watching that game, but besides that, again, happy to be back and talk all things Flames with you today.
All right. Before that, let's give a quick shout out to our Hyperdriver hockey fans. Check out the flagship show of Game Over Network on the Game Over Network channel. Hyperdrive Hockey, all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. Whether whatever it is and wherever it is. Max, Duffin, and Kev have covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdriver Hockey on Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at the gameovernetwork.com. So that's that. So kudos to our Hyperdrive hockey team. Go check them out. They're available once again on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And we are talking about the Flames game this evening. Not the best game like we alluded to the beginning, but the Vegas Golden Knights defeat the Calgary Flames by a score of 5-0. One of the heroes being for Vegas Golden Knights is Cole Schwindt with two assists, and you know the Cole Schwindt story. We'll talk about that shortly, um, and much more to begin. But we'll do quick goal scoring summary in the first period. Only goal from Vegas Golden Knights that was by Petra Angelo, assisted by Holes and Carlson on Vladar's blocker shot side. And on that period, faceoffs was 12 for Vegas Golden Knights, 8 for Calgary Flames. No power plays or no penalty killings on that period. And then hits were 9 for Calgary and 3 for Vegas Golden Knights. And shots were 5-6 in 6-5 in favor of Vegas Golden Knights. So Matthew, we were gonna talk about. It was a decent period for the Flames. I think one of their best periods that they showed up to play. But one thing we also noticed that we didn't like the Huberdeau-Pospisil-Mantha line at all from the starting. It hasn't worked the past couple of games either. Let's talk about that a bit. What are your thoughts on the Huberdeau-Pospisil-Mantha line?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I thought the first period of tonight's game was um a pretty nice sight to see. Obviously the Flames were the lower skilled team in tonight's matchup, but I thought they hung around in that first. I thought they had scoring chances. I thought they did a good job wearing down Vegas. Again, I can't say that was the same for the second and third period tonight, but talking specifically about the line of Huberdeau, Mantha, and Pospisil, I know we talked earlier this season about Anthony Mantha being maybe the Huberdeau whisperer, considering he kind of got off to a pretty hot start. I believe it was 6 points in his first four games. And since then, his drop off has been quite noticeable in his most recent four games, including tonight. Um, I believe, or sorry, this is the fifth game, since we're kind of counting stats. But in the last five of his Huberdeau's last five games, oh my goodness, I can't speak today. He's only managed to put up one goal. So that drastic decline. I know we were so high on his game to start off, and obviously his success translated to the Flames starting hot. But since then, there has been a drastic decline in what we've seen from him offensively, and I think you can make the argument that Pospisil and Mantha, specifically Mantha, that pairing no longer kind of putting in the work, and we'll talk about it later in the show, but we saw a big switch up in the lines in that third period, and I'm sure the reasoning was to potentially maybe get something going out of Huberdeau.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in the third period. Apparently, I couldn't talk as well in between when I started on the ad read, but we'll leave that on the side. But yeah, I think you described it well, Matthew. The first period was decent for the Flames, but then the second and third didn't show up. It wasn't as great. Let's talk about there was yeah, the Huberdeau, and then but Braden Pahal, so his team against Vegas Golden Knights, especially in the first period, I noticed Braden Pahal against his team had some good plays. He created some chances, and like, what have you liked of Braden Pahal in the past few games here?
I definitely think he's had better games than what we saw today. I will agree that first period, I thought he was, generating offense as best as he could. And even that third period, you could kind of see him putting in an effort, and that's something you kind of got to admire from a guy like that, especially playing against his former team. You want to put on a good show, but unfortunately, I don't know if I can talk about Braden Pahal today without talking about that big giveaway he had in that second period. That one was a pretty big defensive blunder. I think you could put a little bit of error on the Flames forwards in the sense that I saw immediately all three. I believe it was the Lomberg line. They flew the coop way too quickly when the Flames were trying to break out of that defensive zone. All three forwards were past the center line before Pahal even had the puck on Calgary's face-off dot in their own zone. And again, it was just an absolute pizza up the middle and something that I guarantee you Pahal is going to want to have back. So I don't think it was the greatest game in the world. I think he's going to want a few things back, but all in all, I think he's been one of the more better surprises on the Flames blue line that I think we can say is not the strongest blue line in the league. Again, tonight is probably something he wanted back, and I think you could make the argument for the Flames across the border sharing a pretty similar sentiment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, not one of the best games, but I did like his first period. We'll talk about the second period and third period coming on. But if you're just joining us on the chat at this broadcast, welcome. My name is once again Anand, one of your newest hosts of Game Over Calgary, and along with me, Matt DeMille. Keep the chats coming, keep your questions coming. We'll answer them towards the end in the overtime period. But a quick hello to our regular host, Conrad. Conrad, welcome to the chat. And Tokai, number one as well. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching this evening as we are breaking down the game against Vegas Golden Knights. Not the prettiest of the ones. Matt, I'll ask you one quick question. Sorry to put you on the spot, but anything else you want to discuss from the first period? I think I have covered all my points. So we talked about Braden Pahal. We talked about a few quick scoring summaries. We talked about how the first period was probably the best for the team. Anything else you want to touch on coming into the first period before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I just think I would say in the nine games we've seen from the Flames so far, I would say across the board, their first periods have been the best, which is something to take away considering that in years prior, you can make the argument that the first periods are what cost the Flames in a lot of games having to battle back. So, I mean, the Golden Knights are no joke. We have to give them credit. They're a good team. They're a loaded team. And they are just very thorough with their game. So that first period is something like I will take 10 out of 10 times. So it was a nice sight to see. Again, it went downhill after that. And yeah, I'm even just looking at the chat, and Takai number one said both 16 shots for the Flames today is unbelievable. In a bad way. Obviously, I couldn't agree more. And at least we didn't lose 6-1 to Columbus. Obviously poking a little bit of fun at the Oilers. I don't disagree. At the same time, the Oilers did score tonight, so I think that is um, maybe puts them a little bit past the Flames in terms of performances today, but just a pretty bad night all across Alberta, to say the least. But that's all I had in terms of what we saw in the first period.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for taking us through that first period quick summary once again. Yeah, we don't know if we feel better if Edmonton lost or this game at all. But both teams not showing up tonight, and there was yeah, one thing I wanted to point. Nazim Kadri actually took a shot to his leg. That one hard shot. He was reeling for a bit, but he looked after fine after that. So we'll have to keep an eye out for future any developments. I don't think he came out playing again, but we don't know if anything will happen to him. But he looked all right. But something, because some of our Flames players, we know they are warriors. They like blocking shots. We sometimes have the highest number of block shots in a game, so something to keep an eye out for, especially him contributing in that factor when it comes to a forward. All right, let's transition into the second period. And oops. Second period, Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page. And we are also working through a page through LaRouche, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. For LaRouche, we are aiming to raise $15,000, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that allow us to employ more people. So if you are thinking to come join this Game Over Calgary team, be sure if you can support us, please do. And if you have any ideas what you would like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, let us know in the comments. And you can do that right now or on Twitter, Instagram, or our Discord server. All those links are available in the description. All right, Matthew, I know you wanted to talk about during the second period on the comparison between the Vegas Golden Knights and Flames. So I'll let you do that, and then I'll bring in my points. So over to you, Matthew.
Absolutely. I would say the second period in tonight's game was um, definitely the turning point in the game if it hadn't done so already. Considering that we didn't see a Flames shot in the first 18 minutes of the period. Um, no shots in 18 of 20 minutes in a period is not good in any stretch of the imagination, but it was just a pretty poor performance from the Flames in that second. But again, I want to give credit where credit is due. Um, it's not like the Flames went into a barn that is typically the team that the home team's pretty bad in. Heading into tonight's game, Vegas was 6-0, now 7-0 at home to start this season here. So you can make the argument it's quite arguably the hardest spot to play in this league in this moment. Again, took it to him in that first period, but I think in that second period is really where the Flames kind of started to get in a little over their heads in terms of playing in Vegas and such a rowdy crowd there. Um, Prior to tonight, Vegas's goal differential was plus 18 at home. Their power play was 41.2%. That is just a juggernaut of stats. And in Calgary's history since Vegas has joined the league, on top of how hot Vegas has been at home, Calgary just doesn't have a very good streak in terms of playing in Vegas. All time since the two teams have been playing, including tonight's loss, Calgary is 2-10 when playing in T-Mobile Center. And tonight's loss just made it their eighth straight loss in Vegas. So heading into this game before the puck even dropped, the odds were so stacked against the Flames tonight. And I just thought that was an interesting kind of tidbit. You know, there's just no puck luck, or I wouldn't even call it puck luck, but the Flames just are typically not very good when they come into Vegas's barn. And tonight was no exception. Flipping things over to you, what did you kind of make? I kind of generally touched on that second period, but now's the time to kind of jump right in. Where are you kind of sitting with that second period?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me on that second period was how Ryan Aska. We know how Ryan Aska works with the team. He will change anything you want on the fly, and he's not shy to do that. And the biggest thing we saw in the second period was the line blender combinations. We'll start with the line we talked about in the first period, and that's the Huberdeau-Pospisil-Mantha line. That is not working at all, as what we have seen. Huberto, part of turnovers. We know we talked about Matthew. We talked about that off air. How game hasn't been as great as what his beginning was. His beginning was at 6 points in like 4 games, but now he has only like 1 point in the past few games or so. Manta, he hasn't showed up, especially since after that Edmonton game. Something is wrong on that connection. And then Pospisil again, we haven't seen much goals from Pospisil working in the center. So I think now when we started to realize that the line was blended, I think they got little some chemistry going on. This is what the lines look like. I'll give a quick summary on that. So Pospisil got shifted to the wing, so that was Zari Kadri Pospisil. Kirkland also got shifted to the wing, so Kirkland, Backland, Coleman. Then Sharkey got moved to the center, so that's Sharangovich. That's Huberdeau, Sharangovich, and Lomberg. And then Kuzmenko, Rooney, and Manta. So those were your line figures that was done by the end of the day, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. Something is not working with the chemistry. I don't know how these line combinations will stay long, but I think that definitely, especially that Huberto Pospisil Mantha line needs a change, and I agree on it. I think you also agree, Matt, that that line specifically needs a change. We may see a call up coming up here soon against Utah, maybe less likely because they are on the road. But again, maybe giving Coronato or a Pelche a chance. I think it's time to do that. But something is not working on that line. Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to do something in terms of line pairings when you can only muster up 16 shots in a single game, especially what was it, 2 to 3 in that third period or in that second period. And again, we didn't see that until 2 minutes left in the second period. So it was evident that you can't just keep going through the motions in terms of sending the same guys out. And even it's just, did Huska expect the lines to just immediately start meshing, immediately start producing? No. But it's also just a message for this team. Like, hey, what you guys are doing is not working. And as a coach, I have to kind of step in and send a message that it's like, unfortunately, like we got to jumble stuff up when so and so's hot, the other guy's cold. We got to play around in that sense. So yeah, I made sense to see the line changes coming. I'm curious to see what they will do for the upcoming game against Utah. I don't really know. I mean, I don't know what's going through Huska's head right now. Something I did hear on the broadcast tonight is there is talks that Sam Honzik could potentially be back for the game against Utah. I don't know how confident they are that he's kind of gotten over his upper body injury, but that could be an interesting kind of storyline heading into that game. Whether we see him play, whether we see him potentially get sent down, stay as a healthy scratch. I mean, at this point, I don't think there's anything kind of out of the question in terms of what we're going to do pairing wise. But I do expect changes to be seen come the game against Utah for sure.
Yeah, definitely. For Flames fans that don't keep, specifically track of the rosters and all. Will just quickly, from what I understand, from what I've read on the other sources, and from what I know. So if they are to activate Sam Honzek, I believe they need to send a player to the AHL because there are currently 23 players. Send a player to AHL, activate Honzek, and if their plan is to keep Honzek, let him play. But if that's not the case, they send him back to the AHL. They'll have to send him down and then bring somebody up. I think that's how it's worked and how I read. We'll correct it on the next Game On or Game Over episode, in that way. But I think this is the best way now to segue into the third period, unless Matt, you have anything to add in terms of the second period.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is anything to add at this point. I think I've said everything I can say, and really it doesn't take too much to put two and two together in terms that wasn't a great period by any stretch of the imagination. And I mean, yeah, I can't say I have much to add for sure.
All right, and before we segue to our third period, Game Over has covered you e- every game after every game like we are doing right now, Matt and I. But in order to get ready to watch your favorite team on your favorite sporting general, you have got to get your game on too. Game on Hockey is a short form daily news podcast which mainly me and Conrad works on. You can find news, podcast covering everything you need to know about the hockey world today in less than under 10 minutes. Hosted by Graham Moisman, Monday through Friday on the Game Over Network YouTube channel in podcast form, which you can find at the gameovernetwork.com. And Game On also features local shows for each Canadian market with hosts local to that market, giving you fun, rapid fire information. All right, into the third period, and that's where it took turn for the worse. We still thought Flames had a chance. They were only down like 2-0. Then came 3-0, 4-0, and 5-0. That's where we entered the game. And two goals coming from Kolizar, that fourth line. Cole Schwindt became the hero, like I told about at the beginning of the show, with two assists. Good on him. That will be a feel good story for him and the Vegas Golden Knights, because essentially they claimed him off the waivers, so a free player they can work with. Good luck to him. And then on the 3-0 goal, I noticed there was no D-man support for Dan Vladar. So again, Dan Vladar fighting off a hip surgery. I know he was in pain last game, but he just said it was cramping. So all efforts to him, all kudos to him for him coming out badly. I think he was another excellent night. And I think that's a good segue, Matt. I don't think there is a final decision on the goaltending tandem just yet. Vladar and Wolf continue to prove every game, and they continue to rotate. Do you think there is an earliest time point that they start saying, okay, it's your crease, or do they still keeping this rotation? Do you think that's the best way to go? How will the goaltending tandem work? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, right now, I think the two of them have been playing pretty similar to each other. At least in my belief, there hasn't been a standout candidate between the two. But again, I would say, in just about every game we've seen, neither one of them has been like your liability in net. The score was not very indicative as to how Vladar played tonight. I think he was hung out to dry for most of the game. I think Calgary's um, defensive weakness really showed out today, especially in that second and third period. So while 5-0 is not necessarily a scoreline that Vladar wants on his resume, I don't think that's something that you can blame him for. So like looking at it in the greater picture, I don't think the Flames have really seen that there's been a number one candidate to kind of take over the crease on more of a full-time basis. So right now, I wouldn't be surprised to see more split starts between Wolf and Vladar. And to be quite honest, I think only time we will make a decision is of one of the two netminders kind of starts. So I keep seeing this split start for at least a handful more games. And then maybe it's something that the Flames coaching staff across that 10, 15, 20 game um, sample size. So that's kind of where I stand in terms of the goaltending back and forth we've seen so far.
Yeah, and we talked about goaltending as well coming into this show, Matt. Aiden Hill, one of the local Calgarians. Congratulations to him as well for a shutout as well. We talked about how these few players each faced each other teams for the first time. We talked about Schwindt. We talked about Daniel Mermanov. Anthony Mantha, that was surprising to learn. I thought he came from directly from Washington Capitals, but unfortunately, I think he got a short span of 18 games or so with the Vegas Golden Knights before coming into the Calgary Flames. And then on the other side, if we talked about the Golden Knights, we had a strong defense with Noah Hannafin playing tonight. Cole Schwinn got brought into the lineup like early this morning, and then Aiden Hill as well. So kind of proud way if you want to look at for the Vegas Golden Knights how they performed tonight compared to the Calgary Flames. But I think as the game went along, usually the comeback kings, we call them the Flames, didn't really come back. I think from the first period, I think they showed their high skills, higher level of play, but then it kind of dropped as we went along. All right, I think we have covered everything from my end. Matthew, anything you want to add before we head away to our final segment of the show?
Yeah, I think heading into tonight's game, one of the big storylines that I kind of wanted to cover was the former Flames, current Golden Knights, how they're going to perform against the group of former Golden Knights, now Flames. And for those who may not know, um, both Cole Schwintz and Noah Hannafin were a part of the Flame system. Hannafin was traded at the deadline last year, while Schwindt was just picked up on waivers just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, on the Flames end of things, Anthony Mantha, Braden Pahal, and DeMille Miramanov all spent time with Vegas last season as well. So I think for me, I was curious to see how our guys would kind of compare to the Golden Knights, and it wasn't even close in terms of performance, which was a little bit disappointing. Obviously, in typical Flames fashion, a big talking point was how the Flames kind of are lacking a talent on center, and by no means is Cole Schwindt going to be that game breaker down the center, but um, just a couple of days, maybe a week after the Golden Knights went ahead and picked up Schwindt off waivers, the Flames it leaked that they were looking for a top six center, and all of us in who are fans of the Flames were like, hey, you just dropped a center that we could have brought up. And obviously, in typical Flames fashion, that center that was picked up by the Golden Knights decided to have a breakout night for the Golden Knights. Obviously, Schwindt, as well as his line mates Keegan Golsar and Nick Waugh, Schwindt put up 2 assists, +3 rating, and for me, it was very. It gave me the same kind of vibes as seasons ago when Matt Phillips got dropped by the Flames and the Capitals picked him up. And lo and behold, the very first game Phillips played against the Flames, he found the back of the net. So it was a very Flamesy kind of night in that sense. And obviously, Noah Hannafin didn't find his way onto the score sheet tonight, but with 20 minutes time on ice as well as another +3 rating, it was a pretty good night for him as well. Whereas you -2, Miramanov and Mantha, pretty non-existent in terms of, well, non-existent on the score sheet, but on the ice and just in terms of a performance, wasn't the best from either one of them. So in terms of guys playing their former teams, it was Vegas's night in that sense. So I think that was a pretty interesting storyline and not something that the Flames are proud of. And last thing, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but you mentioned while he wasn't part of the Flame system, the Calgary kid, Aiden Hill, of course, backstopped the Golden Knights with a 17 save shutout. He wasn't by any, he didn't win the game for the Knights, but he made the saves when they needed to, and it led to them blanking the Flames.
Yeah, definitely. Aiden Hill had stopped, I think, one of the key goals that maybe got the Flames back in, and that was the Braden Pahal goal. And that's where we give him credit at the beginning, saying, hey, Braden Pahal didn't have a fantastic night, although he created some chances, but then he contributed to a goal for the Golden Knights. You want to say maybe a unlucky turnover or something. So that's where we ended, and then good performance by Noah Hannafin was noticeable a couple of times, and the Cole Schwinn with those two assists, two main ones, assists as well. So that's where we are at, and I think it's the final time to head into overtime. What we call it, it's your turn to hear from you. So keep those questions coming and the chat coming. We only have few things on the chat line, but before that, um, let's talk about what a way. What a better way to support something you love by rocking it as clothing. Game Over's apparel line has dropped, and with three unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of a retro skater design, and you saw that skater design on the cards that we publish for our staff, and want to make a statement with our established design currently on sale, want to wear your love for goalies proudly, and with a leave and die by the goalie design, or if you wanted just another coffee to get through the winter, we have got you covered. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. Use the QR code on the stream and now and take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. So I plan to get one of those t-shirts for Calgary Flames hopefully in the here near future. But took a look at the website. All those designs are amazing, so go check them out, and kudos to sorry, Brady as well for designing those shirts. All right, now to the chat line or the text line, whatever you like to call it. So Conrad says that scoreline flattered the Knights. Yeah, definitely they did. Cole Schwindt with the heroic performance, and then 16 shots is unbelievable. Definitely, we talked about how the low shots were, especially in the second period. They didn't get a shot. I think I believe until the 18th minute of that period, and they got only three, so that's where. And at least we didn't lose 6-1 to Columbus. I think you read that one already, Matt. And then can't have Vegas get another player on waivers. Yeah, definitely. I think Vegas have got Cole Schwindt. But actually, we got a good waiver pick on our return though, Braden Pahal. Even though he didn't have a fantastic night tonight, he has been impressive for the our past few games. So would you agree with me, Matt, that one of the good waiver picks was indeed Braden Pahal from Vegas?
Yeah, I don't think he hasn't stood out in in a wrong way so far. I think a guy like his caliber, you can't expect too much from him. But from what we've seen, again, maybe minus tonight, um, it hasn't been something that I've been irritated with by at all. Again, sorry, I'm also reading the chat right now, Anand. And kind number one is asking, should we weaponize that salary cap the Flames have so much of? I don't know where you stand, but where I'm at right now is I definitely think it's still pretty early on in the season. I don't think the Flames are buyers. I think a lot of us understand the Flames aren't buyers right now, but I think down the road, if the Flames keep trending in the direction they're trending of being I hate to say it, but the bottom feeder team that we've kind of expected them to be, I do see a benefit in picking up those kind of egregious contracts and in the hopes that we can maybe grab a couple picks as kind of a incentive to pick up these bad contracts. So in terms of weaponizing in that sense, I'm not ready to pull the trigger on it just yet, just because we are only 9 games in. And granted, I don't think many teams are at this stage. However, Um, Down the road, it's something that I am 100% considering. And we've seen a lot of teams play to their strengths in accruing draft capital because of that. I think the now defunct Arizona Coyotes are a good example of taking on those egregious contracts in exchange for additional picks. Where do you kind of stand on an idea like that, Anand?
Yeah, I think I agree with you for the most part, Matt. Especially right now, it's too early on what the direction is gonna be. We saw the first four games; they were so competitive, they were energetic, they played to the best level, which give us hopes. Then there is this last 4 or 5 games that has been not so great. So between those two, still early to tell what they should do. I did hear reports around that Conroy was looking for maybe a right shot centerman. Maybe that's when an opportunity comes where you might want to weaponize the cap. But I think right now, like you said, Matt, you nailed it. I think it's right now little too early to decide what to do with the cap space available. And right now, use all those call ups, like make use of the younger guns. We have Coronado waiting, Jacob Pelche waiting. We have even the logjam defense side, so like a Brustavich, like a Jeremy Poirier, like maybe even Grushnikov. So lot of good options down in the AHL. So I think utilize those first before you take a direction at the cap space. We have plenty to work with, but right now let's play the waiting game and see what time tells us.
And you mentioned, speaking of the Flames looking for that top six center, um, in terms of weaponizing Cap in that sense, I'm sure all for it. Like, I mean, it's obvious the Flames need help in that center role. My big thing with going out and looking at acquiring a center is I personally think under no circumstance should either a prospect or a pick of any kind go in return for that center. And I definitely think that handcuffs the Flames on what we want to do in terms of as a return. I know in the early stages of reports coming out, one of the guys that have been thrown around is a guy like Dylan Cousins in Buffalo. I would say in terms of the player, I'm okay with his age. I mean, if the Flames, again, I mentioned the need to keep all the prospects and picks, but at the same time, I don't think it's the greatest idea in the world if the Flames go out and get your late 20, early 30-year old center that is the veteran presence. Um, I think a guy like Cousins, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe he's in that 23, 24 years old range. I don't mind a guy in that kind of demographic, but then you kind of have to look at what does a team like Buffalo want in that sense. And I mean, I think you can make the argument that the rebuild they've kind of put on has kind of passed and they are building up to be a better team. But at the same time, um, I don't know if there's anybody on the Flames roster right now that in general, not just speaking about Buffalo. I know we're talking about Buffalo, but I don't think there's a person player on the Flames roster right now that is a massive interest to clubs looking to sell off a center for the Flames. And I think if a club is looking to sell off a center, I think the initial ask is going to be a picker prospect. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But that's just what I see in this sense right now.
Yeah, I think that's the way we have seen the markets trend in recent days. And yeah, I'm not just ready yet to give away a prospect or a round pick just right now yet, especially the way Conroy or even the coaching staff tries to tend to. Again, once again, I don't want to uh, go off the wrong note, but I think definitely you hit the point saying that they're still looking in a different direction, but I don't think they will be ready either yet to send off that what you call prospects and ship out of the door. They want to keep it intact for a better future, definitely 100%. Alright, looking at the chat, looks like we have no more questions. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share, Matt? And then I think we can safely call this. But again, once again, if you're just tuning into the broadcast, not a great game for the Flames. They lose 5-0. Cole Schwinn, you can declare one of the heroes for that game with the two assists. And we were talking about all kinds of things. Feel free to watch this show later, recap. It will be available wherever you get your podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and even on YouTube. You can replay through this video while you're maybe taking a ride home tomorrow or on your way to work. This will be available for you. Yeah, but let's head into the final thoughts. Matthew, I'll get you to go first for final thoughts.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I've been rambling in the last couple of streams, and that's probably going to be a commonplace this season, but I'll try and keep it concise. I'm just interested to see what direction the Flames are going to go in the next couple of games here. They don't have the easiest schedule in the world. I believe Utah, who's kind of slowed down, maybe in a similar position as the Flames started hot, cooling off. They're next on deck. I believe New Jersey is also coming up on the schedule as well. The second rendition of the Battle of Alberta is also on deck. By no stretch of those three teams I listed are no laughing matter. And so I'm just kind of curious to see whether we're going to see a bounce back. Flames kind of put together a couple wins against some good teams, or you know, is this kind of losing skid that we're on going to be a commonplace for a couple more games? So right now, I feel like I've said everything I could say in terms of what we saw from tonight, and the best thing we can do right now is kind of look ahead in the future and see what else is in store for this club.
All right, thanks for that segue, Matt. Let's then do a quick look ahead. So once again, like you said, Utah, we are visiting Utah on Wednesday. It's a 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time puck drop, so that's a 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Conrad will have that post game coverage, so stay tuned to that. I believe he might have a guest, but I won't reveal that surprise just yet. I'll leave it to Conrad. And then on Friday, so couple of days later, we are visiting Devils once again. And Devils, that's a Friday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time puck drop. And Peter Klein will have that post game show coverage for you on November 1st. So, welcome to November. The year is almost ending, can you believe it? And then we have the Battle of Alberta rendition coming once again, the second one of this season on Sunday, November 3rd. Little Battle of Alberta for a Sunday. So sit back and watch that. And that's a 6 p.m. puck drop Mountain Time, and that's an 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So Conrad will have that post game coverage. And then looking into the next weeks, we have Montreal Canadiens, Boston Bruins, Buffalo Sabres, LA Kings, Vancouver Canucks, Predators. A few whole lot of different schedules and different home and away games. So once again, everybody, thanks for watching. We appreciate you joining us. Whether it be Conrad, Tokai number one, little quiet on the Flames chat, no worries at all. We know how disappointing this was. Maybe you are disappointed too. But once again, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video and listen to your recaps. Once again, Matt, along with me, and myself, Anand Unnithan. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. Take it easy and see you all around soon.